of all that we try on earth. The light of its run is the light of the dawn that gives tomorrow birth. On comes the mighty sword and pen, it rules the destinies of men.
And now behold labor's triumph, the smooth, glistening body of machine, the song of victory. Here is no straining of human flesh. The spirit of steel, the joyous chant of motion, the exultant twirling of spinning wheels, the thunder of untiring piston. It is the song of the dynamo. It is the song that labor sings in tribute to science and invention.
Higher profits are being generated as fast as new machinery and production methods are introduced. But the greatest single advance is mass production itself, through the moving assembly line. Starting in the car industry, the assembly line is transforming the daily lives of millions of people. Never before has a change in the way people work brought so much wealth, but also so much alienation and conflict. By the start of the 20th century, the great shift from the country to the cities was well underway. In Europe, the best-paid workers were those who'd moved to the new factories that produced the heavy machinery of the industrial age. The most respected were those whose combined physical strength and skill had taken years to acquire: boilermakers, riveters, foundrymen. As the age of steam gave way to electricity and oil, the nature of the work to be done changed too. Small engines needed a new type of precision. The skilled men who built them belonged to craft unions and worked at their own pace. Despite the manufacturers' hopes, this was not to be the century of the motorbike. The new machine that would do most to change both the world and the way people worked was the car. Thousands of craftsmen worked for the many companies competing for a share of the new market before the First World War. In Britain, the Vulcan Motor Company were proud to film the way their workers assembled cars so slowly, by hand. Charles Hill started as a Vulcan apprentice when he was 14.
Everybody seemed to be busy doing something, and it was only as you went through and going through it yourself, you realised that every man was in one sense, a specialist in his own particular job. There were men, skilled men there when I went there. They were there all their life to the dying day. All skilled craftsmen in their own sphere. In the body shop, there was a lot of wood framing of the motor car body. And then there was panel beaters who, to take the shape of panels on a car, it was done with hammers to bend them round and make bulbous corners. It was all done with a planishing hammer.
Craftsmen controlled the way they did their work. The whole process took several weeks from start to finish, and they took pride in the results.
You were walking down Lord Street, the main town, and see these cars that you'd actually worked on them, people riding in cars. And cars were more of a novelty than they are today. And it gave you an ego.
It was a time when a wide gulf separated those who built cars from those who bought them. But the days when cars were just luxuries for the rich were drawing to a close. America now set the pace in engineering and production. European managers and workers knew that what was happening in American factories pointed the way of the future. And in 1908, one man had a vision that would change manufacturing and create a new market. Henry Ford set out to make the simplest car ever, a car for rural America, a 20th century equivalent of the covered wagon.
Little old Ford rambled right along, and the little old Ford rambled right along. The gas ran out in the big machine, but the darned little Ford don't need gasoline. The big limousine had to back down the hill, but the blamed little Ford is going up still. When it runs out of dope, just fill it up with soap, and the little Ford will ramble right along.
To produce the Model T as cheaply as he wanted, Ford knew he had to change the way cars were built. That meant changing the way his workers worked. As he reorganized his factory to turn out Model Ts, he was influenced by the efficiency expert, Frederick Taylor. Taylor had complained that hardly a workman can be found who doesn't devote his time to studying just how slowly he can work. And then he devoted his life to speeding them up. When Taylor was brought in, he first timed the workers with stopwatches and noted every movement they made. In a famous experiment at an ironworks, he reorganized a worker called Schmidt. Previously, Schmidt had hand-carried 12 tons of pig iron a day up from a wagon. After Taylor rearranged things, the forbearing Schmidt found himself carrying 47 tons, and production had been raised 300%. Called into an office, Taylor helped the world's fastest typist type even faster. The new world record of 150 words a minute was achieved by Margaret Owen, but Taylor claimed much of the credit. At Ford's factory, Taylorism meant dividing car production into simple, repetitive steps. There was to be no need for skilled craftsmen with years of apprenticeship. Men could learn to do any job quickly. A trained wheelwright no longer made each wheel in its entirety. Wheel making was broken down into almost 100 stages, done by different men at different machines. It was much faster, but workers could still complete only 200 cars a day. So in 1913, Ford introduced his most revolutionary change yet.
In those days, each car was built from the frame up on stationary wooden horses.
Later, the company filmed a reconstruction of how Ford tried out his new idea.
Henry Ford watched it for a while, then he had an inspiration. Instead of moving the men past the cars, why not move the cars past the men? So on one hot August morning, they tried it that way. A husky young fellow put a rope over his shoulder, and Henry Ford called, "Let's go." And at that very moment, as the workmen began to fasten the parts onto the slowly moving car, the assembly line was born.
To deliver the parts to the exact point on the line, engineers put in a network of clanking conveyors.
They were running with the length of the building, like carrying the parts. Instead of you carrying it by hands, why the conveyors would carry it on the lines, and it was